All right. Uh, Good morning once again.
Yeah, good morning, sir.
Okay, so I welcome
Morning, sir.
us once again to this edition. A quick recap on what we did last time. It's been a while now because of our regularity. I hope that going forward will be more serious. All right. So we actually started importing libraries into our analysis notebook in Python. And if you can see what I have on the screen, which I have explained with comments, we started with importing pandas as one of the most popularly used library that offers us a lot of functions for analyzing our data, particularly for us to be able to read our data sets into our analysis dashboard. We need the pandas. If you look at the syntax there, it said import pandas as PD. The word import there is a keyword in Python, and the pandas is also the name of the library, and we are representing it as what? PD. Then we also imported another library which support pandas to help us structure our data and to enable Python to exploit large data sets, which is NumPy. And then we also imported an element of pandas by saying from pandas import series data frame. And then after that, we look at how to load a CSV data sets. CSV is an acronym of uh, common separated value or comma separated value. It's one of the most used data formats when it comes to data analysis that is widely acceptable almost by all the available tools out there today for data science or data analysis. So if you look at the syntax there, the data one is a variable. Remember, we have covered the variable. I told us that variable in programming are used to hold value. So in this case, we store the whole of our data frame in a variable called data1. And then equals to is an assignment operator which allows us to assign value into the variable. So what we are practically saying is that PD, which is the library, we are dot read underscore CSV, which is the function from pandas as a library. Then we supply the name of the file. So which means that that function dot read underscore CSV, we call the data from its directory and store the whole of that data in data1. So subsequently, anytime we need anytime we want to access the entire data frame, we simply call data1. And that was how we got this data display. Then we also look at how to load data set, how to load another type of data sets or formats, which is Excel worksheet file. using another pandas function, which is called .read underscore Excel data 2. And then that is how we call this particular data. So we have two different data sets, though it's same data sets, but encoded with different formats. So, but before we continue, I want to use this opportunity to inform us that by 10 a.m. I will be live, which is absolutely free on cybersecurity. I will not want any of us to miss that section. You can tell your friends about it. Share the link with them. There's an advert that is posted. And if you are not in our WhatsApp community group, where you can get subsequent information regarding to our training programs on this platform called Digitech Hub, you can WhatsApp 070 59665919 if you want to join that section. We have the morning section today, starting from 10 a.m. to 12. And then we have another session that will be coming up in the evening from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. on the same subject, cyber security. Don't miss it. All right, so back to our business. I have already prepared my slides that will walk us through a few things we'll be able to cover this morning because of time. I ought to be ending this section by this time we are starting. So I cannot guarantee us 2 hours. I will just try and do, let's say, 1 hour. Okay, so I want to assume that we have loaded or we have learned all the steps on how to load our data set into our notebook. And then we've done this as well. Now we'll be focusing on data inspection techniques. That will be the focus, data inspection techniques. So what do we mean by data inspection? As a data analyst across all tools, not just Python, whenever you are given a data set to analyze, it is in our practice to always study the data, understand the data. What that will help you to achieve is for you to be able to grasp a possible analysis question, which we eventually need to draw in or deriving possible insights, which we will use for smart decision making. It's practical. For example, if we are looking at the data before us, you are not the one that computed this data. So there are 1 million reasons why you should study it before you start your analysis as an expert. You don't venture into analyzing any form of data that you don't understand its values, you don't understand its structure. So take some time to study this data, and then for us to be able to exploit this information about the data sets in Python, it is not by looking at the data, it's by deploying certain methods or functions or techniques in order for you to get this information that you want to know about the data sets. So what I'm going to do quickly, I'm going to load another more comprehensive data set, and that we add as a kind of refreshing our memory on how I loaded this data. So for every section for every topic I'm going to be teaching us this morning, I will be using comment to explain it. I told us in that class that comment is very essential. As a programmer, you must learn how to use comment to explain what you are doing to the consumer of that resource. So, like I said, I want to quickly refresh us on loading data. And this data I want to load, I'll first of all check it in my notebook directory, which is what I have explained. Remember, I said that for you to start an analytics program or analysis project rather in Python, you are expected to have created a folder on the desktop or any other storage within your computer and assemble all the data you want to analyze in that folder. And then if you have done that, that is how I created this folder in that class. I started by creating a folder called 3 Ways Master Class. And then after that, I populated the folder with different data. One of them is customer.csv. Another one is what? Customer.excel. Now, I want to load another data set, but I want it to be more voluminous than the one we have there. I have my reason. So I want to load this data set called the healthcare. So it's actually a healthcare data set that comprises a lot of patients' information captured across different hospitals, stating some of the important information about them, which we shall be looking at. So let's assume that I want to call this data into my notebook. Then I need to understand what is the file format of that data. Now, I told us something in that class. It is very simple for you to understand the difference between CSV file and Excel file. If you look at the icon representing them, they all have, look at CSV has this a table icon, and then Excel has something like this. So this is Excel file, and this is the CSV. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is to right-click on it and copy the part of that file. Or I just take note of the name of that file. Then I proceed to my analysis dashboard. Now from here, I will start by creating a variable like I told us earlier. Every data set you are bringing into Python to analyze, that data set must be registered, must be stored in a variable for Python to acknowledge it. So for that, I will simply say this is what, let me use the name, healthcare equals to pd dot read underscore csv. Then as a function, you open the parenthesis brackets. Now, after that, the name of that data is a string. Remember, I've explained what that means. String in programming represents tests or text-based data type. So, and when we are acknowledging string in any programming language, we quote them either with a single quote or double quote. That is the reason why we are enveloping the name of the file in the quotation. And after that, you simply Control V to paste the parts of that file you copy. Now, to execute your code, all you simply need to do is to either press Control plus Enter, or you simply click on this icon which represents run. Now, there are a couple of errors that are outputted, and we would like to know why do we have this error. I told us that as a programmer, errors are expected. You can never run a program 100% while developing without encountering errors. So it's part of skills you need to acquire, abilities to stay true. That is why programmers are problem solver, because during coding they must have encountered a lot of challenges that will have stretched their memory, and that is why I said they are critical thinker and they are problem what solver in nature. Now we have a challenge before us, and Python has been able to point out the key error. Like I advised before now, never focus on the detail of the error when you have not looked out for the key error. Now, the error could be more than this in some cases. Now, but irrespective of the volume of the errors generated, just go straight to the key error, which is always the last line. So from there, you'll be able to denote what the error is. And Python, being an AI language, is able to, to suggest, to give you a tip where the error could have come from. As you can see here, name error, name. PD is not defined. PD is not defined. Now, there's something I have said before. When you see errors like this, what should come to your mind is that something is missing. What should come to your mind is that Python have not acknowledged one of the attributes you are using. So if it says PD is not defined, now I'll check where I loaded what PD. I'll check my code lines and be able to trace where PD was mentioned. So Python is simply saying that it does not recognize this PD. You know what? The PD exists, but it's telling us that it does not exist. So what is actually happening here is that we created this dashboard some time ago, and today we are referencing what was created some time ago. So there is a timeout. There is loss in transmission. So at the moment, the notebook could not what? Read this line. That is what it's simply telling you. It's no longer reading this just because you have left this notebook for some time. So all you need to do to fix this error, just reinitialize the entire notebook. And how do you do that? Simply goes to the run and then select what? Run all cells. So once I click, it will reinitialize each of the cells. And then by so doing, it will connect that particular cell to where you imported the PD that is saying that could not be located. Now watch out and see what is going to happen. Now you can see it was telling you that what the PD was not what's available. But after running it, now you check there's another error. So you can see what I was saying, bunch of error. Then you look at it again. So what could be this error? So you can see once you solve one problem in programming, another one could surface. And that is why you are called a programmer. So one of the skill sets you have is that debugging skills. Now, we have already debugged the other one and we have sorted it. So which means that this one was on the queue. And the reason why Python could not show us this before is that if that one is not solved, it cannot point out this. So now that you have solved the first problem, second problem has showed up. How do you solve it? Like I told you, you can see the bunch of errors you have here. Sometimes this error can threaten you as a programmer and decide to dump your laptop. Never do that. How you solve it, like I said, forget about all those grammar. Just come to where you have the key error. The key error says what? No such file or directory. So what it's saying is that my URL, which I'm using to reference where the file is, cannot be what? Decoded by Python. So what that means is that the processes involved for you to get to where the file is too, is too cumbersome to Python to locate. So what you are going to do now is to make it easier for Python. And to do that, you can simply stay on only the name of the file. So there's no need for all this uh, uh, path references. Just use the name of the file. That is one way you can solve it. Now, remember, you can try this on your laptop based on your system structure. It might not work. That is the reason why you have to know different ways of debugging when you have this kind of error. So let me execute this and see whether that will fix the error. Now, once it does not, once a number is counted here like 6, and there is no error display, it means that what? Yes, I have accepted your variable. Now, which means that right now we have the data loaded and registered in Python library. So now I can print the entire data. Now, like I told you before, you can simply do something like this, say print, and then pass in the name of the variable as an argument of the function. And that will print the data in an unstructured way, which I don't like, but just for us to understand that you can actually print your data frame using the print function. So you can see the way it printed out what the data. So it printed it in a way that it is not interpretable or presented in a manner that as an analyst, I can easily understand this data. So for me to have a better structure, I still want this data to be arranged in 2 dimensions, such as columns and rows. So how do I do that? I don't need to use the print function if I want it to print an understandable format. So I will just run it like this. So you can see that we have it in a better presentation. Any question first before I proceed?
Yeah, yes, sir. Thank you so much for running this through us. The thing is that this data, the healthcare data, we do not, I don't have it. Let me just refer to myself. This particular health data, I don't have it. That's maybe because of the cars has started before I joined in. But
Okay,
it as me.
if that is the only question, then maybe after the class, I will load it into our WhatsApp group so you can download it from there. You can as well get it through Cargo. You can go to cargo.com as we have planned. You can go there and type healthcare. Once you type healthcare, it will bring it out. So there might be other ones that you just have to study the documentation. So the documentation will highlight the header. Once you see familiar headers like this, then you know that you are working with the right data. But let me see if I will remember to upload it after the class. Okay, but if you have the salary payroll, I believe you also have it. It's not a problem. You can as well use it. I'm just trying to refresh us on how to load data here because that's been a while. Now we have loaded our data. Or any other question before I proceed? Do we have any other question?
Go ahead, sir.
All right.
Can go ahead.
Now, so that is just to refresh our memory. Now let's quickly look at our plans for today. So like I've highlighted in my slides, I will say something the other time that professionally, once you have successfully loaded your data into your analytics notebook, the first thing you do is to run some Python functions to find out certain information about that data set. And that is what I will be focusing on. So I'm starting with what? The first function, which is .shape. .shape. Now, .shape is a function, or let me call it an attribute in Python library that helps you to measure the width and the height of your data. For example, let me switch back to my notebook. Now, looking at this data that we just loaded, healthcare. Before I start my analysis, it is professionally advised that you have an idea of how many headers or how many attributes are in this particular data set. Sometimes the numbers of attributes, the numbers of headers, the numbers of labels you have in your data sets determine the numbers of insights you can actually derive from the data. So instead of you counting manually, name 1, age 2, gender 3, you can simply run the dot shape, and that will tell you how many columns you have in the data frame and how many rows, which are the same thing as what the record in your data. So let's quickly do that. Like I said, I'll be explaining with our comments. So what we are learning right now is how to check the total, how to check the total numbers of columns. Let me use that word. I think we are more familiar with this. And rows in a given data set or frame. Are we together? So that is exactly what we want to do. Now, if you look at my syntax in PowerPoint, I said data name, then you concatenate the attributes. Why I am using the term attribute instead of function? Because it does not carry the parenthesis brackets like this. Any word you use in Python that does not have that bracket, it is called an attribute. But once it carried that parenthesis bracket, it becomes what? A method or a function. Now, what I simply did is to concatenate the attribute to the name of my data set, which means that you are sending this function to this data set to find out how many headers and how many records are there. So let me go back to my analysis environment. So like I just interpreted in my syntax, so I will say syntax. Remember, I told us that it is very important you understand syntax. Syntax are a set of rules that governs what code writing, depending on the language you are using. So syntax in this case just means formats. So always pay attention to the syntax I'm using, because sometimes once you miss the syntax, then you will get it wrong. Now, the syntax is the name of the data set is headkey, which we have here. So if I don't want to type, if the name is too long, I can just highlight it, Control C, and then I go to where I want to type it. I simply do Control V. Then I will then concatenate by putting the period called dot, then followed by the attribute name word, the shape. Then once I run the code by clicking here, you see the output. So the output here now is that we have 55,503 word record as against what? 50 what rows, sorry, columns. So which means that if I call this data set now head here, and then I start counting this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Before I get to the last attribute, I will have counted 55,503. Is that understood? Before I take the next one. Mr. Vitri, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. It's understood.
All right. All right, so that's the first task. Remember what we are doing. If I'm to label it, what we are learning is what? Let me not do this. It's part of what I have explained to us before now. In case you want to zoom in and zoom out your notebook, you can simply click on this word icon. And then you have the negative sign, you have the plus sign, so I can zoom out, zoom out. Why did I zoom out? I discovered I wasn't seeing this icon, and I want to use one of them. I want to add another row at the top, so that I will use that to describe the main topic of our today class. So let me increase now, be able to zoom out. So the topic is data. So by the time you are given assignment after this training, I want to see everything well explained the way I'm doing mine. Now, data inspection. Methods in Python. So we have inspected the number of words. We have inspected the number of columns and the number of rows. So we'll now be looking at another inspection. We want to find out more information about the data we are able to analyze to enable us understand it and for us to be able to draft a meaningful analysis question that will lead to meaningful insights that will end up guiding the organization for effective decision making. Now, there is something that I taught us in the time past, where I said you can actually convert your comments to a note. Now, I'm converting it to a note in order to make it, to separate it from other things I've done so far. So I said all you need to do is to press escape to stop the icon from blinking and tap what? Letter M, and then press what? Control or Shift Control and enter, and that will convert the whole of that comment to a notebook. All right, so now let's go back to our slides and look at another inspection function in Python, which is dot columns. Dot columns. So dot column is another attribute which you can use as a data analyst to list out all the headers. Now I want to show us the difference between dot shape and dot column. For example here, when we did dot shape, it calculated, it counted the number of rows and the number of words column without listing them. Now, dot column will list out only the columns. So instead of counting them, it will list them out for you so that you can study them very well before proceeding with your analysis. So let's quickly go back to our slide and understand the syntax, which is very important. So the syntax is the same. The name of the data set does the attributes. So let me quickly go back to my analytics dashboard, and then I'll use comment. So what we are doing here is what? How to list, or let me use more practical, more descriptive term. How to call out data sets headers. So the syntax is simply the name of the data set again, which is healthcare dot columns. So once you run it, see what happened. So Python pulls out only the headers. Now, without any form of distraction, you can now focus on them. So you can know that, okay, this data set that I'm about to analyze has name, age, gender, blood type, and then medical condition, and then billing amount, the room number, admission type, discharge dates, medical or medication, test results. So you can see it. So this, if you count, you see that it will align with the initial output. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, which was what you attributed here the other time. So you can see that Python is very accurate. Is that understood? Before I go to the
Yes,
next.
yes, sir.
Okay. So the next thing I want to teach us, we are still on data inspection function. Functions you can always use to check your data, to study your data, and to understand your data before you proceed with your analysis. So the next one is how to check data information. So this one is going to summarize the whole thing, including some of the details we have derived with dot shape, with dot what, column, are also wrapped in this single function called dot info. So dot info is a must use function. Is a must use function. When I say must use function, at any time you want to analyze data, please, if you don't want to run any of this set of inspection function, you must run .info because it's going to give you, it's going to analyze, going to give you the summary of all the features that the data set is made up of. So let's quickly look at it. The syntax is the same thing. You simply call the name of your data frame and concatenate the attribute, sorry, the function. So let's go back to our analysis dashboard. So what are we doing here also? Here is what? How to summarize information about my data set. Information about my data set. Now, the syntax is the same thing. You simply call the name of your data set healthcare.info. This one has a bracket, so make sure that you take note of the attributes, the ones with the bracket and the ones without the bracket. So if I run my code, guess what happened? You can see total information about the healthcare data. So let me just show us how to interpret this. Now, class. So this is Python trying to tell you under different types of data, which category does that data set fall into? That data set has gone beyond a string, has gone beyond integer. It is not boolean. Now, what is telling you that what that data set here in Python, it is recognized as data frame. Now, the next one is the index. The index means what? The rows ID, number 1, number 2, which is representing the rows. So this is telling you and I that this particular data frame has 55,503 records. Now, in programming, the first value in an array starts with 0, or it is represented as 0. The reason is that when you are counting in programming, you don't count the first item as 1, you count it as 0. Why? Because we count item after what comes before them. Now, if you are counting the first record, you are going to count nothing, which is equals to 0 before that item. That is why the Python is telling you here that what 0 to what? To this number, which means that what is equivalent to 1 to this. But because in programming, the first item is not recognized as 1. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, sir.
Okay.
This thing is logging me out, so just having some challenges. Maybe probably it's network.
Okay, because I noticed I got a sound, so I wanted to know where it's coming from. Okay, all right. So I'll still interpreting what the whole of this information is talking about. So I think that should be from my Bluetooth. Okay, all right. So please, once you can't hear me, just kindly notify me so that I will know. Now, like I was trying to explain, the first value is at index 0. So let me just do a practical example so that you understand what I'm talking here. Now, so that you understand what I am saying, now let's assume that I create a variable, my name, because you need to understand all this. My name is equals to Prosper. Now, if I want to print out only P, which happen to be the first number. Now, if I do something like this, print my name as my variable name, is going to print out the entire word characters in Prosper. But if I want to print out only P, which happen to be number 1, but because Python or other programming languages don't. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, there was a short glitch, but I can hear you now.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's a little bit clear now.
Yeah, but it's just breaking a bit. Oh, it's okay now.
Okay.
All right. So like I was saying, now I want to call out only the letter P. So how will I call it? I will use what we call the index number. So which means that in programming, every element in a container is represented with a number. And the very first one, which happened to be 0 before it, is called 0. So if I want to print that, I'm going to simply do something like this, print, and then I'll say print, and then I'll select the name of the variable, my name, and then because I am selecting, so in Python, there is a bracket which is used to select what element of a list or dictionary or element of a container. So which is this square bracket like this. So if I put 0 inside there, can anybody tell me the character that will be printed out from Prosper?
That will be P.
That will be P. Now let's run it. You see it now. So if I want to print this R, the last R, I want to print this E. Okay, let's say S. What will be the number here?
1, 2, 4.
4. Okay, so let's try it. Good. No, 4 printed what? P. So
Okay,
we
it's
have
supposed to be 3 because 0 is 1.
good.
0 is 1. It's supposed to be
Let
3.
me put 3. Good. So
Yeah.
the concept is that for you to count P, you count 0, right? That is why it's representing P. For you to count R, you count what? P as 1 before you get to R. For you to count 0, you count 2 letters. That is why here will be what? Here is 0, here is 0, here is 1, and here is 2. For you to count S, you will have counted 3 characters. So that is the idea. So I just wanted us to understand that because we need to understand what Python is saying. Coming. We need to understand what Python is saying when it says 0 towards this. So now you understand. That's what the first record is represented as what? 0. Now let's look at the next interpretation. Data column. Total what? Column. How many? 15, which align with what? What we got when we use the shape. Now, this is where it's now listing out all the headers in that particular data set and telling us whether there is none, which means that what? Whether there are some cells that has no values. That is the meaning.